It looks like Dave just slipped away for a moment. Here he comes. It looks like we're ready to get started. I'm Dan Culhane with the Ames Chamber of Commerce, and I certainly know the folks that are elected officials here. They know me, but maybe for some of our members who I've not met before, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. This is our first session, a legislative forum of all of our elected officials from Story County represented us in Des Moines during the 2021 legislative session. I want to thank those of you for joining us today, and I also want to thank our sponsors. Our sponsors are our public policy sponsors, First National Bank here in Ames, Renewable Energy Group, our state policy sponsors, Converse Conditioned Air and Venue Works, and our closed captioning sponsor. If you see some closed captioning at the bottom of your screen today, that is brought to you by Green Hills Retirement Community. Thanks to each of those sponsors for supporting this very important work of the Ames Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists. I've got one more ground rule after that. Then we'll go back to the panelists and we'll get started in earnest. Joining us today are Senator Herman Kornbach. I believe Senator Annette Sweeney will be joining us at some point in time, and Senator Jesse Green. Representative Rob Bacon called me just a few moments ago, was a bit under the weather and will not be joining us today, but normally Representative Rob Bacon would be here today. He will not be here today. Representative Dave Dio. Dave, welcome.
Hi.
Representative Beth Wessel-Crochelle. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
And Representative Ross Wilburn. Ross, good to see you today. To those of you who are on the call today, if you've got a question, please put it in the chat portion of your screen, and Sarah and I will be coordinating together to make sure those questions get asked in a proper fashion in the order they came in. So let's get started we're changing the ground rules a little bit. If you've been to one of our forums in the past, there's been a brief 2-minute segment from each of the elected officials, and then the chamber typically had 10 to 15 questions we tried to pound through in a short amount of time. Today, I'd like to try something different. I'm giving our elected representatives 5 minutes or so to talk a little bit about their impressions of the first few weeks of the session, some of the things they're working on, some of the things that are important to them, and quite possibly are important to members of the Ames Chamber of Commerce. Once each of them have gone through their short 5 minutes, we'll open it up for questions to you, the audience. I've got a couple of questions if need be, but we'd really like to hear from our members. And so with that, let's start with Senator Herman Kornbach. Herman, we welcome your input and feedback on the session to date.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate all the chamber members attending. I appreciate the sponsors for helping us get on the, was about to say on the air, I guess on the net. These kinds of sessions are very valuable to me, and I'm sure all the legislators. Hearing from our constituents is a vital part of our job. We're supposed to represent you, so we need to know what your priorities and goals are. I'm going to talk about an education bill here today that had a subcommittee in the Iowa Senate yesterday and passed out of the subcommittee, notwithstanding my opposition. A similar bill has passed out of not only subcommittee but committee in the House and is eligible for floor debate. This bill would devastate our research universities. I'm talking about Senate File 41, and the House File is House File 49. These bills would abolish the tenure system at our Regents universities. Anybody who's been involved with academia understands that academic freedom is a cornerstone on which we have built in this country the best collection of universities on the planet, hands down. Nobody else has as many top flight universities as we do, and that's because we have stood in defense of academic freedom and academic tenure that provides the job security that allows researchers to pursue their research interests without fear or favor is what is the cornerstone of academic freedom. When the legislature messes with academic freedom, it has devastating consequences. The most famous case in Iowa is the oleomargarine scandal of 1943. You might not think that there might be anything terribly scandalous about margarine, but it seems that the dairy farmers at the time didn't like a pamphlet that the economics department at Iowa State produced that suggested that in wartime with resource pressures, it might be best to take corn and turn it directly into margarine. What a shocking idea that was. But the legislature succumbed to pressures from the dairy industry. They put pressure on the university president. They put pressure on the economics department chair. The pamphlet was temporarily withdrawn. A year later, it was re-released with virtually no changes. All the underlying science was correct the first time. But in the meantime, there was massive exodus from the economics department at Iowa State. Ted Schultz, the economics department chair, went to the University of Chicago, which is where he was when he won his Nobel Prize, I believe in 1979. George Stigler left and went to the same place, which is where he was when he won his Nobel Prize, I believe it was 1982. Shortly after the war, shortly after this incident, another economist by the name of Leo Hurwicz came to Iowa State, but didn't stay very long. He joined a number of other expatriates as it were up at the University of Minnesota, which is where he was when he won his Nobel Prize a few years back. Full disclosure, Leo Hurwicz was the thesis advisor to my better half. So the impact on academic freedom, of the reputation and standing of the university would be tremendous. And just in terms of hiring, the only people we'd be able to hire are the people who weren't good enough to get tenure elsewhere. Let's put it that way. And since this bill would basically foreclose the opportunity for all of our junior faculty to receive tenure, there would be a massive exodus of our youngest, best, newest, and brightest scholars. But the impact goes well beyond that. I want to thank the Chamber for registering against this bill. I want to thank the Iowa Business Council for registering against this bill. Wendy Winterstein has done some great work here. She has reached out to a lot of the agricultural groups, to the pork producers, to the Cattlemen's Association, to the poultry folks. They have all registered against this. They understand that at Iowa State, the agricultural research that we do is absolutely vital to the economic health and security of their industries, not to mention the services of Veterinary College and the Veterinary Diagnostic Lab, which would be devastated if they lost their tenured faculty. But it goes beyond that. The ISU Research Park. The ISU Research Park is there because Iowa State does research, because we have tenured faculty who do top of the line, forefront research to advance science in a lot of areas. But a lot of those scientific ideas have economic spinoffs, and a lot of the businesses have located out there to take advantage of those spinoff ideas, to take advantage of the personnel that are trained at the university. And they represent not only 2,155 jobs at the research park, but another 2,500 jobs across the state for the companies that have graduated out of the research park. Suffice it to say, this would just be devastating. And I'll mention one other thing. Then there are the research dollars that the university brings into the community. The region's representative claimed nearly $1 billion, while Iowa State picks up its share of that. Fiscal year 2019, the sum total of research dollars coming in, $469 million. And this last year, we built on that, $494 million, almost $500 million. All of that money, all of the research park jobs, all of that goes away if you undermine academic tenure. So I am hoping that we can persuade the Education Committee and the Senate and the House as a whole not to move these bills forward. I probably exhausted my 5 minutes. I have quite a few other things to talk about, but I'm sure I'll get a chance down the line.
Thank you, Herman. Senator Green, would you like to take it next?
Yeah, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Chamber of Commerce, for putting this on. this is all new to me, so I don't know what normal looks like, and it's been an amazing month. I can't believe we're already a month into session. It's gone by so fast, but I've loved every single minute of it. And my plate's been pretty full. I've got 8 committees: Veterans Affairs, Human Resources, Natural Resources, Ag, Labor, Admin, Administrative Rules, Ways and Means, and Ed Subappropriate. So, but about half of them have been fairly quiet. Lately, we've been running some bills out of labor. Just got my feet wet yesterday with managing a bill through full committee. It was a bipartisan bill in regards to adoptive families and how employers are to treat them like the same as biological families. But this week I was really excited too to run the bottle bill. There's a few of them that are in the Senate that have popped up, but I really believe the 7-cent bottle bill that I'm running is probably going to be the one that people rally behind. But it's the one that's gotten the furthest in the past. So it's been a fun bipartisan bill for me to get my feet wet with real politics. I mean, there's so many different pieces of the puzzle to the bottle bill, and it gives you a different glimpse of government. And lately, of course, education's been taking up a lot of the conversations. And again, I'm proud of the Republicans for putting out a predictable budget and a flexible budget. It's over 1.5% over inflation rate. The inflation rate so far this year is 1.1, and we it sounds like the Senate made a deal with the House at 2.4. So anyway, I look forward to further conversations on that. In Ag, recently, we passed out a committee beginning farmer tax credit, some adjustments with that to allow more flexibility and to hopefully spur some more participation in that program. And I think I'll just leave it at that, and we'll see how the conversation goes. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate your comments. Next up, I see Senator Sweeney has joined us. Senator Sweeney, good to see you and welcome. You've got 5 minutes to provide a few comments on the session as it has unfolded to date for you. Please
Thank
join
you very
us.
much. This is terrible, but everybody always starts out, can you hear me? So can you?
We can.
Okay, good. Because I'm on my husband's computer this morning. I should not have left my computers out in my car overnight. All the batteries are dead and I forgot the power sources. So thank goodness we have plenty of electronics in this house. This year, I am serving on the Agriculture Committee. I'm vice chair of that. I'm on the Education. I'm on Human Resources. I am chair of the Natural Resources Environment Committee and also Ways and Means. And with the, let's just start with Ag Committee, we're starting to work on some bills with, like Jesse said, the beginning farmer tax credit. We were really excited about that. We're also going to be working on some other legislation in Ag for our farmers. So I'm looking forward to those. Education, we've passed the bill for the SSA, the Supplement Student Aid, used to be known as allowable growth, out of off the floor the other day at 2.2. We have a few individuals that aren't happy with the 2.2, but I think I'm very proud of my Senate and my House colleagues that we are providing funding that they know what they're going to get. It is not a pie in the sky and not of another section to add to people's property taxes. So I'm very pleased with that bill. Human Resources, we are still really at the beginning stages with the Human Resources. And one bill that I'm had penned last year, it's for the pediatric autoimmune disorder with PANDAS, which results in, let's say your child has strep throat and then all of a sudden it expands in your child into the brain tissue, which your child can be cured of this. But a lot of times it's really, really hard to identify that your child is strep throat or another infection has exploded into pandas, and a lot of some of the symptoms are your child will quit eating, a total turnaround of personality. They'll quit drinking. And so we're working on that one to have awareness, and also for individuals for it to be able to be covered for insurance. So I'm looking forward to that one. Going down quickly, natural resources and environment. I just got assigned the governor's biofuels bill and for this year, and I'm really looking forward to tearing into that, because I've gone all the way out to DC defending our renewable resources and ethanol, and I think the governor is taking a very great and aggressive step for our ethanol. And then Ways and Means, we just got started on Ways and Means, like Jesse also said at the beginning. There's some things that have been quiet, but there's a lot of things that are starting to gel together. And so we passed quite a few bills from Ways and Means last night, or yesterday, in fact. So thank you very much for having us today, and thank you for your patience for me to get on. I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Not at all. Thank you, Senator Sweeney. Thanks for being here today. Next, we'll move on to Representative Dave Dio. Dave, welcome.
Welcome, everybody. Not too much has changed. Not a lot has changed for me this year as far as the committees I'm on. Very similar to the past. I'm on Chair Labor again this year. Also on a full appropriations committee. I'm on Commerce, Local Government, Environmental Protection. And you know, as the others have been stating, the different committees are sort of at different points with some of the legislation that's moving through some of those committees. That's where, you know, some of the policy committees are hard at work getting some policy pieces moving through. You know, and appropriations, I think one of the important things that we should highlight that we did get done this week was the education funding. It's always, you know, we always want to try and get that education numbers out there so that the schools know how much they're going to have, so they can start building their budgets. And we had a bill on the floor last night that, as Jesse mentioned, has an increase of 2.4%. And this is at a time when schools have had a temporary, we hope it's a temporary decline in enrollment. Was a fairly large drop at some school district that's likely COVID related. And so, you know, I think, you know, you look at the past, we've been in the House now for 15 years. In the last 11 years or so, we've had just pretty much a steady increases for K-12 education, no cuts. You look at the period, the 10-year or so period prior to that, there were usually across the board cuts every couple of years that came along because they had to keep doing revisions when revenue didn't come in as they had hoped, and we've been able to do it in a way that we've been able to promise K-12 that if we promise that this is what you're getting, you're going to get it. It's going to be sustainable. Also on the floor, we passed a bill that makes it clear that school districts, that the science is showing that the COVID is not as highly transmissible among kids. Schools have had pretty good luck being in person. The schools that have been in person, it's been working well. We've made it clear to the schools now that they all need to be at least offer the option for parents and kids to be in person if they want it. It's still going to allow the schools the option if they want to do some kind of a hybrid, or if they want to do you know, online also. That can be an option, but they have to offer the option to be in person full time. So I think that was an important piece of legislation we got done this last week. We've also did a piece this past week that makes it clear too that we're not going to allow, we've got 5 school districts that did not allow open enrollment out of their districts. There's some fairly egregious cases of kids that weren't allowed to open enroll, that were being bullied or things like that. And we want to make sure that open enrollment's available to kids in all the districts. And you know, this we're talking about open enrolling from public school to public school. some of the other things that I'm working on, sort of in my my committees that I'm in, got several bills that are just sort of getting started. I've got a bill that I'm introducing in labor that has been kind of worked on for quite a few years. There's been it's never real. It's some changes to the unemployment system to kind of update it. It's been a lot of decades since we actually did some changes. There's some code language cleanup that needs to be done. And there's some changes that puts us closer in compliance with similar other states with the way they handle their unemployment systems. And hopefully we want to make sure that our unemployment trust fund is in good shape. And, you know, we've gotten through this COVID. We had, with the large unemployment numbers that we had a federal bailout essentially that allowed that system to still stay in pretty good shape, but we wouldn't have been in very good shape if we hadn't gotten that federal money. So, and it's a good time, I think, to kind of review where that unemployment system is and make sure that it's you know, a good sustainable system going forward, and employers and employees can rely on it. So that pretty much concludes most of what I've been working on, the highlights anyway. And so I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Next, we'll go to Representative Wessel Crochelle. Beth, please.
Thank you, and thanks for having us. It's always good to hear what your concerns are, so we know what direction we should be taking. I am serving, I'm still ranking member of the Human Resources Committee. I also serve on Judiciary, Public Safety, and new this year, I'm on the Justice System Sub-Appropriations Committee. A lot of my work is focused on health and human services. Some of the good things that we have done so far, we've passed out a telehealth bill out of Human Resources, so there will be parity. If it passes, of course, the Senate with the governor's signature. Telehealth has been a huge issue for people during COVID, being able to access healthcare without having to leave their homes. It also is important, it's always been important, and it's nothing new. We just saw an increased use of it, trying to stay as healthy as possible without having to leave the home. It's a very popular bill. So many people have been looking for it. Probably the number one question I get from constituents is, how can I get my vaccine? That's tough. But I got a phone call this morning saying I helped somebody get one, which I'm kind of amazed at because they are hard to come by. Where I went was the Story County Public Health website, and there is a list in Story County of where you can go and who's offering them. This couple drove to Zering to get there, so it's a little bit of a drive, but you don't have to limit your search to sources in Ames. So make sure you do a pretty thorough search when you're looking for where you can get your vaccine. A lot of us are not qualified yet, me included. I'm not that old, but I'm getting there. We also passed a bill that will cap the amount insulin will cost diabetics, and that's really important to so many diabetics. We are hearing of the loss of individuals who are rationing the amount of insulin they used because they couldn't afford to get their prescriptions filled. We passed it last year. I think because of COVID, it didn't go any further. I hope it goes through the Senate. We have passed a large number of child care bills. Unfortunately, most of them are just doing the bare minimum. So we've raised our pay for child care providers just to the bare minimum of 50% of the market value, and we should be going up to 75%. Part of the reason we have a hard time with keeping people in childcare is because the pay is so low, and we obviously need quality people in there. We passed a bill that would allow unregistered childcare centers to add one more school-age child to their centers. And essentially what that does is it discourages people from becoming registered. We need more registered childcare providers, because registered childcare providers have some oversight. They require some education. It's not terribly difficult, but it does provide a level of confidence from parents, for parents, when they place their child into a center. And I would do anything to discourage people from not becoming certified. Well, those are some good, decent, or heading in the right direction bills, and I look forward to answering your questions as we go along here today.
Thank you, Representative Wessel Crochelle. Next, we'll go to Representative Ross Wilburn, who I don't know if I should call you representative or chairman. You've got a new job since I last saw you, Ross. Congratulations.
Absolutely, and thank you. I think we're floating back between rep chair or chair rep. I'm not sure which one of the two. But good morning, everybody. It's great to be here, and thank you for tuning in. And State Representative Ross Wilburn. I continue on the Judiciary Committee and the Justice Systems Committee. I am new on the state government as well as the Appropriations Committee, and I'm ranking member now on the Veterans Affairs Committee. And in general, the Veterans Affairs Committee tends to have a little bit more bipartisan bills come out of it. In fact, one of the things that we're doing, there's a bill that's going to work its way through to allow, provide $300,000 statewide for support training for our veteran reps in each county, so that they're able to make sure that they are accurately and consistently providing information to veterans on what support systems and supports that are available for our veterans, something that we certainly want to make sure that we have in place. My hope for the session was that we would be starting with things related to manage our way through the coronavirus, getting kids back to school safely. Iowa families, there's some food insecurity related to people not being able to work or less due to coronavirus, and then what we came through with the derecho. Things like getting food banks exempt from sales tax, to Beth had talked about some of the child care assistance that came forward. It's something, but it's not something that's going to be adequate, and child care is certainly a workforce issue of affordability and accessibility. My hope, again, was that we would be looking at some support for extending some support for small business to help with the economy, trying to make sure that sole proprietorships and businesses up to 50 employees are eligible for extending Economic Development's Iowa Small Business Grant Relief Program that Beth also mentioned about telehealth, mental health parity. Those are the types of bills, and then certainly accountability and transparency with the coronavirus. Unfortunately, we started with two controversial constitutional amendments related to guns, related to abortion. Regardless of your position on those, my question was, why now? That was what we started with, and there's some things right in front of Iowans right now that continues on. I'll just stop right there and look forward to questions that you have.
Thank you, Ross. Let's move into questions. I don't see one right away, so I guess I'll start. And Senator Cornbach touched on this, and maybe I'll go in reverse order here. So, Ross, I'll start with you. Here in Ames, that tenure legislation has certainly garnered a lot of attention, as well as it has in other region institution communities. And in fact, the Iowa Chamber Alliance came out against it quickly, as well as some other organizations. Any sense on if there are any merits to this? I mean, I know we are the only state in the union, and that if we dropped tenure, we'd be the only state in the union without tenure in place. I'll start with you, Representative Wilburn.
This legislation is a concern to me. It's a concern to a lot of folks. Senator Cornbach mentioned several issues related to it there, but I'm stepping back from some of the mechanics of tenure, but just looking at Iowa State, University of Iowa, University of Northern Iowa. I mean, those are part of the economic engine of this state and has put us in the quality tenured faculty that we get has put us in a competitive position with world-renowned educators that really has put us on the globe, and that the research park benefits from that knowledge, and to make sure that we have faculty who are competitive around not only the country but around the world. So that's a huge would put us at a huge disadvantage, I believe. I think it's also, it seems that there are other bills that are coming through that are focused on the Regents institutions. There's one, I believe, that's coming through. It might be in the Senate. Maybe Senator Cormack can comment later about trying to do some type of survey so that faculty members would have to state what their political affiliation is. Again, I think these are things getting beyond the free speech and free thought, but it's going to put us at a disadvantage to other states, and it's not just at the higher ed, but things that are happening at K-12. It's the competitiveness, and it's really putting us at a disadvantage in terms of just the opportunity for education, period.
Thank you, Representative Wilburn. Representative Wessel Crochelle, would you like to comment?
Well, this is a huge concern. I have a weekly social Zoom that I do with friends of mine that are now all around the country. Many of them were ISU faculty at one point. One of the things they brought up last week was that a few years ago, Missouri proposed cutting or eliminating their tenure. And in our application processes for several different jobs, professor jobs here at ISU, faculty positions, we were getting a lot of individuals from Missouri who wanted to move out of Missouri. Even the discussion, even the proposal hurts the university. The fact that it has moved out of committee in the House is extremely damaging. If we don't, if you don't understand what tenure is, it takes 6 to 7 years of work. And that work includes community work, it includes research and being published, so peer-reviewed research, and it involves teaching that is heavily evaluated. I mean, there are people who go in and evaluate the teaching. There are people who, the students evaluate the instructors. All of that goes into a package, and large groups of people are, it's a huge, long process. The year anybody goes through their tenure process is extremely stressful. This is not an easy process. It doesn't guarantee employment for the rest of your life. There are all sorts of reasons that an individual can be let go. And the fact that we are not, are even considering eliminating it is so concerning. And I appreciate the Chamber's position on it and all the work you're doing to try and preserve higher education here. I am so sorry that it has come to a point where these kinds of discussions are necessary.
Thank you for your comments, Beth. Our first two speakers on this question have both kept it inside 2 minutes, and I should have said, please keep your responses to 2 minutes. So next we'll go to Representative Dave Dio. Dave, please.
Yeah, Dan. I've seen. I haven't had a chance to read the bill. I know about it though, and I will not be supporting that bill. I've already talked to some of my colleagues. I know there is some anger over some things that have happened over the last year, but they need to understand too that I know there's not as many there's more liberal professors than conservative professors at the universities, but the tenure also can protect conservative professors too. So it can work both ways. Those incidents that happened this past year, there's basically 3 ones that garnered a lot of attention, one at each one of the Regents universities. And I've kind of noted that none of them had anything to do with tenured professors. The one at Iowa State was a non-tenured instructor, I think. who is on contract and I hear may not be there much longer. There's a case at the dental school over at University of Iowa. I think the problem was more of an administrator than it was a tenured professor. And at UNI, the issue was with some students with a student-led group. So really, a lot of the incidents that have occurred this last year that are causing some of the discussion about tenure really didn't have anything to do with tenure. And so, I think for various reasons, I think a lot of the other reasons have already been stated that, as far as the possible damage to the university, as far as, people leaving or difficulty getting people to come here, those are important reasons also. And I also would point out too that you talk to a lot of the administrators at the universities, they'll tell you that quite often it may be a choice between giving someone tenure or a salary increase. And in some cases, they may be able to offer tenure and not have to pay quite as much. And so it could be a financial decision also for the university. It might be detrimental if we have to offer professors large amounts of money more than what they would normally have to offer them because they can't offer tenure. So I'm going to be opposed to that bill, and I'm trying to convince my colleagues that it's not a good idea.
Thank you, Dave. Senator Green, you're next, please.
Yeah, thank you. No, I've had quite a few constituents reach out to me to give their opinions on this, and I thought the most shocking stat was that we would be the only state in the nation to go this route. But I mean, in general, I'm a I always believe in flexibility, competition, and things of that sort. But when we're the only state that's going down that route, it makes me very cautious. So anyway, I look forward to looking at this bill closer and talking with different people.
Thank you, Senator Green. 38 seconds. That's got to be a record. Nice job.
Dan, could I just add a final thought or two? I appreciate the point, especially that Representative Dio made. If you abolish tenure, how do you attract high quality people? If they don't have the job security, you are going to have to pay them substantially more. As to the other cases mentioned, some of the free speech cases, I would just remind everybody that we passed on a bipartisan basis a strong campus free speech bill 2 years ago. I supported that. I helped move it through the Senate. And I think that the provisions of that bill have been successfully implemented in the cases mentioned. Both students and faculty and administrators need to have access or have the ability to speak freely, respectfully as well, we hope. But sometimes our students don't always live up to that standard. But certainly the idea of a university being a free speech zone, the whole campus has to be a free speech zone. And I think that because of that legislation, it is.
Thank you, Senator. I was going to give you the last word on this, but I'm going to go to Senator Sweeney, and she can provide the last commentary on the tenure legislation. Senator Sweeney, please.
Well, 99.9% of the time, Representative Dave Dio and I concur. We concur on this one too. I'm just concerned about some of the professors, whether they be conservative or whether they be liberal, whatever that might be, is passing on their thoughts and ways to the students and not giving those students the breadth and width to be able to explain themselves no matter what side of the fence they're on. And when my two boys were in college, they had a couple encounters. And so encounters is the way to put it. And that did not need to happen. So I think we need to make sure that we value free speech, no matter what side of an issue you're on.
Thank you, Senator. We're going to jump into a member's question now, and I'm going to read it. And if I need to read it again as we go through this, let me know. The question here is from Kim Grivach, co-owner of CIT Signature Transportation. She's on the Iowa Group Travel Association Board of Directors and the newly formed Iowa Travel Industry Partners Board of Directors. She's hearing that tourism is a focal point of the governor's plan. Her question for all of you is, how will you support tourism in our state, especially since this sector has been hit so hard by COVID? And I'll start at the top with Senator Quirmbach.
Well, thank you for that question. I know the Gribash family a little bit, worked with her husband way back when. I can't remember what the issue was, but had a good interaction there. The tourism industry is indeed important, financially important to the state. I think that the single most important thing that we can do for tourism is to clamp down on the virus. That is what has been causing the problems, not just in tourism, but also in the restaurant industry, a lot of consumer-facing industries. People haven't been able to get out of their houses to go to the local restaurant, let alone to take a bus trip someplace. So I think that, we just need to do a better job. I've been very disappointed with the governor in her lack of seriousness, I'm afraid I have to say, with regard to requiring masks, requiring social distancing. We clamped down pretty early and pretty well, I give her credit for that, on the schools, but it quickly became apparent that there were shortcomings with regard to the nursing home industry, with regard to meat packing and other areas. We have a variety of different virus variants that are coming at us, some of which are more contagious, some of which made less susceptible to the vaccines. So we really can't let our guard down. We also have to be more effective. We're among the bottom of the states as far as getting the vaccines out. Here's the one thing that I would say that we can do for tourism is to support our state parks. And in particular, we need to pass a clean I will bill, the 3/8 of a penny increase in the sales tax that the voters approved 11 years ago, and the legislature has not acted on that. They approved a 3/8 of a penny increase in sales tax if it was to be used for such things as outdoor recreation. That got messed up in a much more convoluted bill last year that would have resulted in, among other things, cuts to education. So I couldn't support that, but I certainly would support a clean I will bill, get that money flowing in, use it to enhance our state parks. You can go out and walk in the woods, and you can even do that without a mask. So that's my answer as far as promoting tourism.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Sweeney, tourism.
Yes. Well, I got a positive. We had a bill that ran through Ag yesterday on agritourism and limited protection, because we've had some people go on to a agritourism place and the tour guide had told them, do not go in this certain section. Don't go to close to this fence. Well, of course, curiosity kills the cat, just about. And they went ahead and proceeded to a place that they should not have gone. It was blocked off. It had tape around it, and it was an adult. It wasn't a child. It was an adult that did this, and they got harmed. And so for us to be able to tell our story in Ag, we need to make sure that the liability protection that we have in place. Granted, the people that are giving the tours do have liability protection, etc. But when it's blatantly not the tour guide person's fault, they need to be protected. So I was really excited about the agritourism. Our state parks, love our state parks. I'm chair of natural resources. I've already visited, I think, 8 parks already this year. I'm going to hopefully do all of them. I think there's 84. And yes, social distancing on parks, as Senator Quirmbach said, is the great thing of our state parks. We need to make sure that the monies that are allocated to our natural resources go to improving our state parks instead of buying up extra ground that either adds to if it's adding to a floodplain, that I don't have a problem with that. But if it's just ground to get so they just have another chunk next to a park, I think we need to deter some of that and to put it into our state parks and take care of them. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, I think if anything, as state parks, they've gotten a good spotlight on them throughout COVID. I've never seen the ledge so busy as it's been the last 9 to 10 months. We'll go next to Senator Green. Senator Green, you want to talk a little bit about your support or how your perspectives on tourism, and I think more specifically, how do we support the tourism industry folks that have been without work, without revenue for this extended period of time?
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I don't want to project my worldview on everybody else, but number one, come to the Dayton Rodeo. That'll help the tourism out here. But I'm just kidding. But I'm thankful for Annette's words on state parks and stuff. I've always been a big proponent for making our natural resources more accessible and better the quality of them. I believe the state has enough land, and we just need to do more with the land that we have. Bike trails, of course, is a big thing, and that's why I support I Will, like Herman was talking about. I'm a sales tax guy. You know, with I Will, we would see property tax relief and income tax relief. Excuse me. And I look forward to the day that we get that done. And of course, the answer of all answers, cut taxes. So let's simplify our tax code, and let's spur economic development. And in exchange, that's gonna solve a lot of issues, including better tourism. So, and Reynolds came out with a big, bold broadband number of 450 million. That's of course connected to this piece of the pie. And so we need to continue our conservative budgeting and make sure that we get the job done with broadband. So in a way, everything is tied together with tourism and quality of life and this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Dio.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with a couple of positive things. One thing that I didn't hear anybody mention was there's been a huge uptick this past year in hunting. You know, we get a lot of hunters that come in from around other places that come here to hunt for deer or pheasant or, you know, wild turkeys, any number of different things. And so there's been a large, a year ago, 2 years ago, the legislature was concerned that there was been kind of a downturn in the number of people hunting, and it was, you know, the revenues that come from that fund, you know, a lot of the things that we were talking about, like our parks and things like that. And there's been a large increase, I believe over 30% this past year, because people were looking for things that they could do, you know, that weren't in public, you know, with a lot of other people. And hunting is obviously something you can do, and, you know, as you know, by yourself kind of, or with a very small group of people. And so that's a positive thing. I think that's really something good that needs to be touted here in the state. You know, also it was mentioned about the parks and high use for the parks. And obviously I think some of that has happened because of COVID. People are looking for things to do outside. And so whatever we can do to continue to promote that. I think, you know, during this time of still having some COVID around, there's going to be some people, I think, that are a little bit leery about flying. So I think there's an opportunity there to tell people to stay in Iowa. There's a lot of great places in Iowa that you can visit. This past fall, I went up to Northeast Iowa to, you know, during the fall, a nice weekend in the fall to view the colors up there, and spent some money up in the area between Dubuque and Decorah. And you know, that was a great time up there, a great trip. And you know, I think there's an opportunity maybe to sell people on staying here in the state. You know, as you know, those things are important for tourist dollars too. A few years ago, I was chair of the subcommittee on economic development, and economic development budget is the one that does the tourism dollars. They you know, it's not a huge budget, but they do a pretty good job with what they've got. And they've usually been pretty nimble, you know, and I'm sure they've adjusted some of their sales pitch based on COVID. And I'm sure they're also thinking about some things they can do as we get out of this period, and we can start maybe attracting travelers from other states, and what we can do to try and continue to build up tourism here in Iowa, because it is an important economic tool that we have, along with all the other things that are important that we can do to help the economy of Iowa.
Thank you, Dave. Representative Wessel Crochelle.
Thank you. We are often thought of as flyover territory, but we all know that there's a lot of attractions and lots of things that you can do here in Iowa. We've heard about parks and hunting. Everybody was looking for something different to do, and there were different businesses that probably did really well during the pandemic. I took up gardening, never gardened before in my life, but it gave me something to do, physical activity. From what I understand, a lot of the gardening stores businesses did very well. We do need to help our businesses though who are hurting, and I am concerned about those. I think there has been some relief, particularly for bars and restaurants, because they've been hurting a lot, but I know I hear from other businesses. One in particular is bowling. Bowling alleys have been really hurt. And we need to do more in terms of providing them some relief to keep them in business. We want them around when this pandemic is over, so we have some other outlets besides the new ones that we have found. And I don't know what the governor's plan is. I don't serve on either of the economic development committees. I'd be interested in knowing that plan because I do think that there's a lot in Iowa that we should be promoting. And I look forward to looking at her plan.
Thank you, Beth. Representative Wilburn, tourism.
Thank you. And any tourism strategy is going to involve attracting more people to the state. So managing our way through coronavirus is critical. The support for businesses and parks and things that has been said already is a key part of that. And I think another element is, to get dining, lodging, agritourism, people out across the state and not just where people's attention might tend to go to, the urban areas, that type of thing, is group travel. And group travel is an opportunity to get people to all four corners of the state. And if the person that asked, if you're not connected with Iowa State University Extension and Outreach's Community Economic Development Program, they've got some tourism programs there, support, training strategies, suggestions that I encourage you to do. And just on a more personal note, I, as part of another form of group travel with RAGBRAI, I am on an advisory committee for RAGBRAI that started after the shakeup with RAGBRAI this past year, but there was concern about where the money goes, whether the communities are getting any profit, or the nonprofits that the charities that are supposed to get some of the funding. I've been asked to serve. We've had a couple meetings. We've got another one coming up, I think in March. So those are just a few thoughts about it.
Thank you, Representative Wilburn. Okay, we've got our next question from Linda Merkin from the Story County Board of Supervisors, and kind of along the line, she notes clean water is essential to recreational tourism. Story County is now working with several adjacent counties through 3 watershed management authorities to help improve water quality. Her question is, are there any initiatives or resources likely to come out of this session that might provide funds for these organizations to work with private landowners on implementing best practices, especially some that could retain water? And then she says, think drainage districts. Any resources coming out of the session related to watershed management authorities and clean water? Ann, let's start with Ross. Why don't you kick us off?
Senator Cornbott mentioned a clean I will bill. Would love to see one. I haven't seen anything that's come across or been proposed yet. I know that there is another bill related to, well, let me stick with I will, because that will help with that conservation, some of those conservation strategies. But I believe there's another bill coming through related to the CAFOs, the combined area feeding operations, that's a Democratic proposal. It will likely not get assigned to a committee. Those are the only 2 things that pop into my mind right now.
Thank you. Representative Wesley Crochelle?
I think I will is where we need to go. It needs to be, as we've said, a clean I will bill. I actually am writing an I will bill. I'm ready to file it, where because when you raise the penny sales tax, then there's 3/8 cents goes to I will, and then there's the remaining amount. And I am picking up for that remaining amount an economic justice bill, which would be a baby bonds bill, where we would start investing in creating accounts for babies that are born and stay in Iowa, to help them with their education or to purchase a house when they become adults. I think this is a great idea to try and help, particularly in children who don't come from families with a lot of resources. So this would balance that out a little bit. So children who are coming from economically challenged families would get a little higher income. It was a Cory Booker proposal nationally. I'm going to propose it as a part of an I will bill locally. So the I will definitely would help with water resources and clean water services.
Thank you, Beth. Representative Dio.
Yeah, I think Linda asked specifically about resources this year. It's a little early in the process to know for sure. As the legislators are right now that are on budget subcommittees, they're meeting for a few more weeks, and then they'll be wrapping up some of those meetings, and then some of the real work on the budget, putting the whole thing together will really get into swing, and the discussion about tax issue, kind of the same. A lot of the tax issues usually come later in the session, as far as those issues don't get quite as much priority right now as policy. Right now, a lot of the policy stuff is going through committees now, so I'm not sure exactly where we're gonna. Haven't heard anything about any new programs, but as far as the funding of the current programs, like for watersheds and that sort of thing, I would advocate we need to keep supporting those, and keep probably need to still continue to find more money for that. But some of those decisions will probably come later in the session. I'll be talking to some of my colleagues about this issue in particular.
Very good. Thank you, Dave. Senator Green.
I believe Senator Green had, oh, there you are. Somebody dropped off. Was that Senator Sweeney?
Yes, she dropped off just at the worst time. This would have been a great question.
I was hoping she would pipe up. It's her committee assignment.
Yeah, this is her bread and butter issue. So I don't know. So I don't see anything right now. So far, ag and natural resources have been pretty quiet. We've only ran a few bills, but to kind of go in a different direction that hasn't been talked about is, this past year I couldn't get over how much money the federal government was throwing around, and I know there's nothing that we can do about this except be outspoken about it. But if those dollars that were thrown around last year to agriculture was used for conservation practices and things like that, agriculture would have changed overnight. And instead, those dollars didn't have, I believe, the taxpayer in mind. And so anyway, last year was a crazy year, and the way that the federal government spent money was pretty crazy as well. But in my short farm career, I've been farming 15 years. I've seen so many changes. I'm so encouraged by the changes, even within our farm family. Every single one of our neighbors is doing something different. We're experimenting, whether that's strip till, no till, different practices. So if we can get a little bit more investment from whether that's the federal government or the state level, I think we're going to continue to see so many benefits from that. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Green. Senator Kornbach.
Well, thank you. Yes, I do think we should pass a clean I will bill. Part of the money was for things like outdoor recreation and state parks, but part of it also is to clean up our many polluted streams and rivers and lakes. So I don't have a whole lot more to add to that. I would hope that we would be able to get back to talking about K-12 funding, however, because I have a rather different view on that. In particular, the Ames School District under the current Republican proposal would be cut by $500,000 next year. The only way to make up for that would be increasing local property taxes. The Ames district is not alone in that. They're in fact, under the House proposal, I'm seeing 137 districts in total would be cut in actual dollars. Relative to inflation, over the last 4 years since Republicans took total control of the legislature, the cumulative shortfall relative to inflation is just under $300 million. Our kids' education has been shortchanged.
Well, Herman, that was my next question, since I didn't see one from the audience, was I wanted to talk a little bit about K-12 funding going.
But let me flesh it out.
So we would have started with you anyway, so please go ahead.
Yeah, let me flesh that out a little bit. As I say, the cut to the Ames School District would be about $500,000. Over the last 4 years, and I've had the Legislative Service Agency run the numbers. Here are the numbers. All right. Relative to inflation, we've had a shortfall in fiscal year 18 of $26 million, fiscal year 19, $114 million, $107 million in fiscal 20, and the current fiscal year, $48 million shortfall, a cumulative total of $295 million, or 97% of the claimed budget surplus has come from shortchanging our kids. Now, I'm an economist, so when I use the word real, I mean relative to inflation. And the reason that's important is easy to explain. Let's suppose that your boss tells you you're going to get a $1,000 raise next year. That sounds great, right? Until you stop and realize that inflation is chugging along and raising the price of everything you have to buy to support your family, and your cost of living is actually going up $5,000. Well, $1,000 more coming in, but $5,000 more going out. You're not ahead. You're behind $4,000. And that's exactly what the Republicans have been doing to our public schools in this state over the last 4 years. They've been putting a few more dollars in, but not enough to keep up with inflation. Now, this year, Senator Green is approximately correct. The allowable growth percentage is slightly above the rate of inflation. They found a new way to shortchange schools, and that's by using bogus enrollment numbers. The enrollment numbers, as calculated back in October, were not representative. They were low. We didn't have 6,000 students suddenly disappear into an alien spaceship. All right, they were just staying at home, and because their parents were protecting them. Next fall, we have every reason to believe that they'll be coming back, plus the usual increase. We're probably 10,000 student increase next year at about $7,000 per student. That leaves us about $70 million short in terms of the funding for next year. So, yes, the percentage allowable growth this year is slightly above inflation, but you have to take the dollars per student times the number of students, and the number of students is being severely shortchanged. I offered an amendment in the Senate to allow school districts to use the higher of last fall's count or the count the year before. The Republicans voted that down. That would have eliminated most of the property tax increase. Like I say, the way things stand now, the new figure, 137 districts will be cut in terms of their state aid, and will have to raise property taxes to make up the difference.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Green, any insights on K-12 funding?
Yeah, so I would love to see Herman's numbers because something's not adding up here. He's right. This year's inflation number is a 2.24, but the last time that we've had 3% inflation has been, it was back over 10 years ago. And so all the time, the talking points are we need to have these automatic 3% increases in the SSA to keep up with inflation. And that's, you're really rounding the numbers up to get to that point. And so the thing, this is all new to me, and that formula is quite the formula. But when I talk to superintendents, the common thing that I hear is they want predictability and they want flexibility. In my local school district, they're building multi-million-dollar buildings, but they're having drops in enrollment. It doesn't take much to look at that situation and see that there's a problem with that. And so if those school districts had more flexibility to use their dollars, my campaign promise was higher teacher pay and lower class size, and I intend to deliver on that promise. And, you know, we're spending about $14,000 per student, and that's a big number. And I think one piece of the puzzle that hasn't been talked about, Senator Cornbaugh brought up in the beginning about academic freedom, and that got me a little bit excited. It made me wonder if he was going to jump on board a school choice. But to me, that's part of the equation as well from my perspective. Anyway, Mr. Senator Cornbaugh, I'd love to see your inflation numbers because it's not jiving with mine. So
I would be happy to share them with you. And by the way, I did not round any numbers one way or the other. The numbers were calculated by the Legislative Service Agency, by the people who do that calculation on a regular basis.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Green. Representative Dio.
Yeah, so first of all, with regards to Ames, whether they're going to have more money or less, if they're going to have less money, then I haven't followed Ames's enrollment numbers, but evidently that must mean Ames's enrollment numbers must be down, because there's no school that's the only way schools are going to receive less money is if their enrollment is dropped. And we fund the schools based on a per child basis. That's how the state support works. With regard to what we've done over the years, as far as whether we've kept pace with inflation or not, I'll just throw out just some very round numbers. As far as 10 years ago, we were funding schools at a rate of about $2 billion a year, and we're just a little over $2 billion a year. And the state support this year or this coming year will be well over $3 billion a year. So $1 billion increase over the last 10 years. And so the last time school funding got cut was back in fiscal year 2010 when Culver was governor. We've not done any cuts in school funding since then. It's been increasing funding every year since then. The numbers that I look at that I think are more important to really determine whether we're keeping pace or not is, are we paying teachers more? Teachers, if you look at the cost of living here in the state of Iowa, compared to the salaries, we're one of the top 10 states for teacher salary on the basis of cost of living. And also, what are the class sizes doing? And in the last 10 years, class sizes have shrunk. We have overall smaller class sizes. And so, I think the numbers that I look at, I think that are more important are those type of numbers, and we're doing very well in regards to those things.
Thank you, Dave. Representative Wessel Crochelle.
Thank you for the question. There's been a lot said here, and I have to say that just watching how public schools have been treated over this first 5 weeks of the legislative session is just very disappointing to me. I listen to educators and what their needs are, and so many of them are truly struggling. It is my goal and my hope that students are back to school safely as soon as possible. And I know that we passed a law that says that they will go back, or they are allowed to go back starting now, full-time in person. This creates a huge expense. I mean, the CDC says, it's safe to go full-time in person in schools. They're a safe place to be if you can social distance. I don't know how many of you have been to Ames High School recently. The new Ames High School is going to be great. There is not going to be any social distancing at Ames High School. That building was built for 3 grades, and right now holds 4 grades. There is no possible way to social distance at that school. Now, agree with it or not, they are going to go back to school. I'm sure that they will work really hard to keep students as safe as possible. But what we are not considering is the limitations that each school district has. We are working our way towards a much better school for our kids, but by not acknowledging that Ames High is definitely not a great place for kids to go to social distance, we have, as a state, taken on responsibility that we should not be taking on. the cost of COVID to schools is extreme. I met with the superintendents before session started, and they said that the money they got from the federal government didn't even close come to covering those expenses. The expenses of COVID is hurting our schools, and that doesn't even begin to talk about the, we've had these low increases for years. And when you have low increases and schools are just barely getting by and doing the best they can to get by, and then you add a pandemic in, we have to and must do better. And I am just so disappointed in how we have been treating our school districts this year and, for quite a few years now.
Thank you, Beth. Representative Wilburn.
The only piece I will add, because I've got another Zoom meeting in 3 minutes, to add on to what Senator Cornbach and Representative Wessel-Kushel talked about, and someone who's worked in a school district as an equity director, diversity officer, the learning supports that our public schools have to provide to students with intellectual disability, for those that are with families that have lower income, that there are greater supports that are needed to be provided. And you hear stories, but I've also witnessed when I was working in a school district, teachers pulling money out of their own pocket for those supports. So whether you want to get into the argument about school choice, whether you want to talk about relative to the budget, the amount of money that's gone towards education, there are challenges, and we are not funding the challenges that our students need to grow and learn. School has to be a safe place to learn. It's hard to come to school to learn if you're hungry, if you have attention deficit disorder, if you have transportation issues, challenges, whatever it might be. We need to fund our students to invest in our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wilburn. There are no other questions. It's 12:43. We can land the plane, if you will, and give everybody a closing comment, or I'll do one last call for a final question from our audience. Seeing none, and knowing that Representative Wilburn has to leave, Representative Wilburn, do you want to make any closing comments and what you're looking forward to in the upcoming weeks?
Just thanks everybody for this, and look forward to the next time we're able to get together. My hope is that we will again focus on the issues that are right in front of us right now in terms of managing our way through coronavirus. I encourage folks to, when the vaccine is available, please get a vaccination. I'll be getting mine, so that I'll be wearing my mask in the meantime, because that helps me keep you safe, and I hope that you can help keep each other safe. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Do appreciate it. Representative Wessel-Kroschel.
Yeah, well, thank you again for having us. And I just want to reiterate what Representative Wilburn said, is we need to focus on COVID relief. So many people are suffering, so many businesses are suffering. It's what we need to do instead of focusing on, getting rid of tenure and trying to destroy our universities. So I'm hoping that we have really good news next time we come back together. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us today, Beth. Representative Dio.
Yeah, I don't know if there's too much else to add. We're moving along, I guess, as fast as we can. We want to make sure, with the COVID out there, you never know for sure what's going to happen, whether things could get interrupted with the session. So we continue to move as quick as we can to try and get some of the things done, and we're hoping that we may end up starting the budget process a little sooner than we have before. I hope we do. I hope we get out early. As a farmer, I also have always been one who wanted to get out as soon as we possibly could. And I know a lot of the voters and taxpayers usually do appreciate it when we get out earlier on time also. So I think we'll just keep plugging away, and hopefully the next time we'll have some other things we can share with you the next time we meet.
Sounds good, Dave. Thank you. Senator Green.
Yeah, thank you so much for putting this together again. And I'd have to say, for the first time in my life, I'm not hoping for spring quite yet. I'm having so much fun at the Capitol. This has been such an amazing experience, and I've learned so much and grown so much through this experience. But anyway, a couple things I'm going to be excited about next week is the bottle bill. I was really happy when Annette gave me that bill to floor manage. And we got it out of the subcommittee last week, and there's about 3 different bottle bills in the Senate right now. And mine is a 7-cent option. It doubles the handling fee. It's not exactly what I want, but you know, I was kind of hoping for a 10-cent bill, but it's definitely getting the ball rolling on this, and I kind of sense the momentum will be there to get it across the finish line, hopefully. Also next week, I kind of look forward to Ways and Means gearing up a little bit more. I look forward to some of the tax conversations and learning more about that. But anyway, in closing, thank you so much, and reach out to me if you ever have any issues or questions, and look forward to that.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Green. Senator Quirmbach.
Well, just to finish up a little bit, Representative Dio is correct in saying that school funding gets cut when you lose students. The problem with next year is that the numbers are phony. We all know that 6,000 students didn't disappear from the state this last year. We probably actually added a couple of thousand, but some stayed home. They'll be back in school next fall. They'll have less money for more students. As far as the districts that are getting cut, I don't want to be too much Ames centric here. So Ames would lose 543,000, Boone Schools 324,000, Marshalltown 178,000, Ogden 71,000, Roland Story 159,000, United, which is just to the west of Ames, 185,000. Like I say, 137 school districts would face cuts and therefore property tax increases. So that's the education picture. Not too good. I'm sorry to report. I do hope, as Beth and Ross said, that the next time around we'll have better news to report. My home number is 292-8984. If you don't write it down or forget it, it's in the phone book. There aren't very many queues. I'm not hard to find. And my email address at home is the best one to use. It's hcqbach@gmail, hcqbach@gmail.com. So thanks to everybody. Thanks to the chamber. Thanks to the sponsors. Good to hear from you all.
Very good, Herman. Thank you. Well, I too want to thank our sponsors for their support of the Ames Chamber of Commerce policy programming. First National Bank, Renewable Energy Group, Converse Conditioned Air, Venue Works, and Green Hills Retirement Community. I'd like to thank our senators and representatives for the time and energy they give to supporting Ames and Story County and Boone County as we move through the 2021 session. The work is never easy, but it's essential. And so we're grateful for the efforts you put forward on a daily basis on behalf of over 600 members of the Ames Chamber of Commerce. I would share in closing that our next event will be March 5th. We will have a session update from some folks that aren't elected, but certainly have close perspectives on what is going on at the Capitol. We'll have Dustin Miller from Nymaster Good. Dustin is also the executive director of the Iowa Chamber Alliance, an organization that this chamber is a member of. We'll also have JD Davis from the Iowa Association of Business Industry. And we'll have Joe Murphy from the Iowa Business Council for a perspective, for their perspective on the 21 session. We'll bring this group back together then later in March. March 26th will be our next legislative forum, similar to what we had today. Again, my sincere gratitude to our elected officials and those of you who joined us today. Have a terrific weekend, and remember to stay Story County strong. Thank you so much.